Using ChatGPT is not automating tasks. You've likely heard a lot of people throwing around the term automating and saying that using ChatGPT and these other tools are automating your tasks. In reality, what they're doing is enhancing those tasks and speeding them up. Now, when it comes to automating tasks, if you'd like to take that step, keep watching, because what we're going to cover today is a tool called Zapier or Zapier, however you'd like to say it. And the idea behind Zapier is combining different tools and setting up automations to free you up from having to do, obviously, manual tasks. Now, Zapier has been around for, many years, and it's been very valuable for many years. But now, with the combination of Zapier plus AI, it just takes the ability of it to the next level. So what we're going to cover today is the basics of how to create your own Zap. I have a couple different examples that I'm going to walk through step by step and kind of give you just an overall view of how to actually automate tasks using AI and the work that goes into it. So to start off, let me first make my screen a little bit smaller. Let me screen into the corner. This is going to be the first screen that you're going to be seeing when you load up Zapier. Now, Zapier has some free plans, but if you want to get some real value from it, I would recommend getting the paid plan. I think it's like $20-something a month. Totally worth it. We'll make one Zap that'll be 20-fold that. Anyways, right when you first log on, there are a couple different things that I want to make sure that I touch on, just so you're not confused. Right off the bat, you're going to see this "What would you like to automate?" Now, this is basically Zapier's form of a ChatGPT helper, form of an AI helper. What you would do is you would type in here what you're looking to do. For example, let's say you wanted to have your emails analyzed with ChatGPT and then sent over to your CRM or maybe to Microsoft Teams, for example, sending it off to your team members. What you would do is you would simply type in here what you're looking to have done, then the AI tool would then try to replicate that with the tools that it's connected with to give you the outcome that you're looking for. So very cool. It's still in the beta form, but it is very useful. I've used it on a couple of different of my Zaps to get me a very strong starting point rather than me having to do it all by myself. So another thing that I wanted to start off and touching with is the different options. The Zap right here, the first thing that you see, is the main thing that you're going to be messing with. Now, a Zap is just the connections of different tools that you're connecting together and that it's able to zap in between. So, like I said, for an example that it has right here is when you add a reaction to a Slack message, it then creates a card in Trello. And it does that automatically without you having to do anything. Zapier is all about doing the brunt work right off the bat of setting it up and then not having to worry about it again because it does it for you. It's automating that task. Very similar to any other types of automations that you're hearing getting thrown around. A lot of the time it's mostly going to be through Zapier, Make, or some other sort of tool. So like I said, the Zap is going to be the main thing that you're going to be messing with today. But then you also have things like tables, which can go into Zaps, same with interfaces, chatbots, and Canvas. So table is just an automated set of data that you might have a zap information into this data or this table, which can then be used again back into the Zap. You have interfaces, which interfaces are where you can create your own little apps, have it create forms for you, and even pages. Then lastly, you have the chatbot and the Canvas. The chatbot, like it said, is an AI-powered chatbot that you can have set up on a website, set up on a form, for example, anything like that, where you would usually use a chatbot for, which can then be backed by Zapier's actions. And then lastly, you have the Canvas. Now, this is perfect for team members. So if you are a team that is just starting off with Zapier, I would totally recommend jumping onto Canvas right off the bat, because then you can build Zaps together with your team and kind of lay out the groundwork. Basically, it's like a giant whiteboard that you can utilize to create these Zaps. From here, I want to take you over to what we're going to be focusing on today, and that is the Zaps. So as you can see, I mess around with this tool a bunch, but what we're going to do is I'm going to showcase three different examples of ones that I've built that could be very beneficial to you, and kind of walk through the steps of how to create your own Zaps. So as you can see, we hopped into a Zap that I've already created. Now you're going to be looking at kind of like a whiteboard looking thing that's going to have arrows down. Now, the idea here is this is kind of like a markdown. You're going to start off with the top, and then this is going to trigger this, which is going to trigger this, kind of like in a row of what's happening. Now, you can get much more complicated with this, but these are what you're going to be comfortable with at the beginning. And this is what, for the most part, you're going to get the most value from. Now, you can set up more complicated zaps in the future, but there's no reason in jumping to that right now. So, right off the bat, the use of this Zap is to not only record my calls, but then to utilize ChatGPT to summarize them, highlight any action steps from them, and then send me a Slack message of, hey, here's what you talked about in your meeting. Here are the key takeaways, all that fun stuff. So this is something that took me probably 10 or 15 minutes to set up, 15 minutes to test, and then I was all good to go. So when you're first starting a Zap, you're going to have what is called a trigger. Now, what this trigger is basically whatever action needed to be taken to have this thing occur. So with this example, we're using Fathom. Fathom's a note-taking tool. And what I did is I had, whenever Fathom has a new AI summary, so whenever I complete a meeting, that triggers this Zap for occurring, for it to happen. Now, right off the bat, you see a couple different things right here. Now, let me just actually click at it just so we have the ability to change things so I can showcase to you what this looks like. So right off the bat, you're going to have the ability to pick your app. Now, Zapier is connected with 7,000 plus apps and tools, a ton out there. It highlights just to highlight a couple. We have Asana, Google Docs, Google Drive, Gmail, basically anything that you can think of. It likely has a capability of attaching itself to and utilizing in some way. You also have obviously the Zapier products and some built-in tools as well. You also have the AI assistants and things that you can utilize. So we obviously see ChatGPT, Dante, which is a chatbot thing, Descript, which is for video editing, Fathom, which is the AI note-taking tool. So you have a ton of stuff in here to utilize, which is awesome. So when you're first starting off, you're going to pick the app of choice that you're looking to trigger this event. And for my example, we have Fathom. And then next you have the actual trigger event itself. So whatever's going to start the action of the Zap. So you're going to likely have a bunch of different options here. For each tool, it really depends on how well it's integrated into Zapier. Will kind of depend on how many options it has and just the tool itself. If it's a simpler tool, it's probably only going to have a couple different options. So for this example, we have new AI summary. And then lastly, you just need to simply connect your account. No big deal. You just click, it'll say connect. You connect into it, sign into your account, and you'll be good to go. So after you have set up the app of choice, you can then move to the configure section. Now this will look different for ChatGPT and a little different for Slack. For Fathom, there's really not much that it can utilize. So it's like, all right, when will this occur? This will trigger when I have a meeting, my meeting. So whatever's in my meetings tab, if I have a meeting that's in my meetings tab, boom, this will trigger, good to go. Then lastly, what it'll want you to do is it'll want you to test it. So what it'll do is it'll go and try to find records that you have in the past and then try to utilize that record for the testing phase. So for this example, I have two different AI summaries from December that it's going to pull to continue this Zap before we publish it, to just continue testing it. So then after that, you would click continue with selected record. And then we will move into the powerhouse of this, which is ChatGPT. The reason that Zapier is now so much better is because you can do something like an AI summary, but then it can then drop it into ChatGPT to analyze it for insights and things like that. And there's millions of different ways that you can utilize ChatGPT or other, Claude, for example, and Microsoft Copilot. There's so many different ways that you can utilize these AI tools, especially within a Zap. So from here, we chose our app of choice, which is ChatGPT. And then now we have the action. So we had the trigger. Now this is the action that the Zap is going to be taking. So the trigger was we have a new AI summary, and the action is the conversation with an assistant. So we have a ton of different options for ChatGPT, like analyzing text, sentiment, classifying text. The two that you're going to likely be messing with the most are conversations and a conversation with an assistant. The only difference being here is that a conversation with an assistant is in the playgrounds section of openai.com. You can head into there and you can create an assistant. So I created an assistant primarily for this. And the idea behind an assistant is I just get to basically set up, it's like a GPT, for example. I get to put the custom instructions. I also get to pick a couple different other options that you wouldn't usually have in a regular chat that I would have for this chat. So, like I said, there's a ton of different options here, even like generating images, summarizing text, uploading files. The uploading files one would be great for if you had a GPT or you had a location or had like a GPT or an assistant, you could then have it auto update with new client information once it got it from this app. So after you then pick the action, obviously you sign in with your account, and then you can then configure the ChatGPT text and all that. So the message right off the bat is going to basically be your prompt. So in this instance, I just had to say, hey, let's summarize this meeting and give me the key insights and takeaways for me to utilize in terms of the client's progress towards their goals and the things we discussed. Now, like I said, this is just a basic prompt. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. It just basically needs to be something consistent enough that every time that you get a new AI summary, it's going to give you consistent results. Now this, for this example, is about all you would need to make sure that it's summarizing the meeting and giving you key insights. From here though, this is where you need to make sure you're not messing up. So we have the little bit of a prompt itself right here, but then it doesn't have the context of the AI summary. It doesn't have a context of what we discussed. That's where this little plus button comes into hand. So you would click down at the bottom right here where you'd want to insert it, and you click the plus button. From here, it's going to pull up all the information that it has from the trigger that occurred, which is the new AI summary. So in this example, the new AI summary talks about, I had a webinar with Jason, what we were talking about, brainstorming, things like that. For this example, you would just kind of scroll down. There's a ton of different things that you can input, which a lot of it's not necessary for this example. But now you can move down into this where it says, all right, we have AI summary section, plain text, Markdown, Slack, HTML. These are different formats that I can utilize. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to take all that information and then drop it in alongside my prompt. So the example I picked was, or the choice I picked was Slack, because I'm going to be sending this to my Slack. So once I selected this, you see it's kind of like its own little section. Within this, it has all of the information that we talked about, and basically has like a transcript of that meeting that I had. Next, for the sake of using an assistant, you can select your assistant, and then you can obviously name it, give it instructions if need be. I already have given my assistant instructions in its own section, so I don't have to worry about that. You can then also choose the model, which I think is really important. Right now it's having little problems because I had sent the draft, but with this example, you could choose GPT-4o, regular GPT-4o mini. Obviously mini saves a little bit of money, a little bit quicker as well. And you can also choose different tools. You could add in code interpreter or file search as well. So depending on the use that you're looking to get out of ChatGPT or OpenAI or potentially Claude or anything like that, you can change up the tools that you're using. Basically, once you've configured everything and you got it where you want, which like I said, you don't really have to change many of these things. With a conversation without an assistant, it's even simpler. And all you need to do is simply type in your prompt and make sure that you're adding in the extra information with the plus button, and you should be good to go. Now you move to the last step where you're just going to simply test it to make sure that it received the information from Fathom and it was able to generate an output. So you'd simply click retest, or for you, it would say test. And then now we can move on to the last portion of this Zap, which is then sending that output from ChatGPT to Slack. So very similar, picked our app, selected our event. So for Slack, there's a ton of events as well, adding reminders, creating channels, deleting messages, editing messages, all that fun stuff. But we're going to just do send a channel message. You could also do send a direct message if you wanted to not have anybody else get the ping of, oh, there's a message. So you could just do obviously a direct message, and then added your account. And then this is where you would configure it. So for my case, I want to send it the channel or send it to the articles channel. And then the message text is where you would need to go back and press the plus button, go to the conversations with ChatGPT rather than Fathom, and then adding in the full response. Now, like I said, there's a ton here. You don't need to worry about any of it. Just click on the full response, and then you will basically be good to go to have your first Zap set up. You can have it sent as a bot. You can name the bot if you want. I could name it like Hank's AI, Zap, or anything like that. And then you're all good to go. Now, the last thing that you would need to do is test it and then publish it. And you would be perfect, all ready to go, having your first Zap up. So that was the first one. Now let's get into the other two examples of walking through how to do this. So the next Zap that I wanted to show you, I actually had the Copilot help me create it. So over here in the corner, you can see once you're like opening up the Zap and you're wanting to create it, you can simply click on the Copilot over here, and then you can go back and forth with it. So right off the bat, I had it generate me the outline of what I was looking for. So I said, hey, when I add a task to Asana, use ChatGPT to suggest first steps or additional resources needed for the task. Then add those suggestions as comments or a checklist in the task. And it said, all right, cool, let me do that. So then it generated it. Then I quickly made a couple different changes to it, and I was good to go. So let's kind of walk through what this can look like and what it can do for you. So as it said, yes, whenever I create a new task in Asana, one of the many like management platforms out there for getting tasks done, it would then generate a conversation about that task in ChatGPT, and then generate me some insights and like actionable steps and things like that. So I chose my app as Asana. My trigger event was a new task. It could be a completed task as well. Maybe it's just sending a quick notification like, hey, this task was completed on Asana. It could be a new project as well. And then maybe when you have a new project getting created, it sends out an email to everybody saying, hey, new project was just created. Make sure to go add in your own things, a subtask. And then I obviously chose the new task. So when the new task is created, I then just made sure I clicked my own workspace and my own project. Obviously, you can choose what workspace you're using or what project you're using for Asana. And then lastly, just simply test it. Then from there, where the real magic happens is within ChatGPT. So I did a conversation this time instead of a conversation with an assistant, because just to showcase kind of how the difference is. So I chose the action as conversation. We go into configure. Now this is where the user message changed up a bit, because it takes a little bit more. I wanted a little bit more for what I was getting on the opposite end of things. On this example, I had my prompt say, suggest notes, tips, and a plan of action for the following task. Then I added in the name with the plus button. I added in notes of what we had previously put in there about this task. And then I also said it was created at this time and is due at this time. Now, obviously, these are a little bit old in 2024, but to showcase how this is utilized, I wanted to make sure I got this to you. So with all of this information, it is able to effectively go through and then suggest notes, tips, and a plan of action. And see how it's a little bit different here. We don't have as much of information. I did add in here assistant instructions, but none of this really matters as much. The instructions are definitely important if you want to kind of give them some like a GPT instructions, but it's not a must. If it's something as simple as suggesting notes and a plan of action, things like that, you don't really have to worry about it. But if you want to make sure that it's following a certain pattern, for example, using bullet points, or maybe you're giving it more context as to what the situation is that it's giving information on, like, hey, I work as a marketing manager and the tasks that we're focusing on are all marketing related, of course, or these are our clients, things that they're working on, then that gives it more instructions to be able to help you better. So same thing, you can change the model. You have a memory key as well. Now the memory key, basically what it does, and it'll tell you right here, but it's basically just a unique value. It's going to allow you to continue a conversation with a previous message. So let me close that real quick. And lastly, you have your max tokens, temperature, things like that. So the max tokens, basically what this defines is how much of an output that ChatGPT can give. The more tokens, the better. But sitting at around 1,000, most time all you're going to need, you don't really need that much more than that. And then the temperature basically decides how much it sticks to the instructions that you give. So for this example, if you have a higher value, it's going to be more random. With a lower value, making it more focused and deterministic. So I have it on 1 right now. Realistically, you're probably going to want it closer to like 0.5 or lower if you want it to really stick to your instructions. But at 1, it's going to be random enough where it's going to still give you what you're looking for, but it could throw in something extra that you weren't asking for, but it could be beneficial to you. And then the top P as well is just nothing that you really need to focus on. So then we continue to test. You click test, you retest it, and then move on to the last step, which is just simply having it then go back through and then add these comments to that task on Asana. So very simple. All I said was, hey, let's add a comment or story to a task. And then configure it. Obviously, your same workspace, same project, same task. And then you would just go down here, and then for the text, you would click the plus. You go to your conversation with ChatGPT, and then you'll be good to go. So perfect. Now we have our second Zap in place. As you can see, this was simple. This is nothing. It doesn't need to be super complicated to be able to benefit you. And that's one of the biggest things I want to highlight, that with Zapier, it's all about like simplicity over complexity. You can have the simplest task or simplest Zap completely help like automate a task that you might have spent hours doing beforehand. So the last Zap that I wanted to walk through is taking new newsletter subscribers and then adding into your CRM, sending a Slack message to you saying, hey, you got a new sub, and then lastly, adding them to a Google Sheets for you then to reach out to. So to start off, we're going to use Beehive for this example, but obviously if you use a different tool, there's a very good chance that it will be connected with Zapier. You then have your trigger event. So for this example, it's new subscriptions. Then we have which publication, which for your example will be the name of your newsletter, and then a webhook description, which for this, this is only going to appear on the Beehive side of things. So on the side of your other tool, it's not something that you really have to worry about with the Zap itself. And then lastly, simply test it. So make sure you're testing it. And then we'll move on to the folk section. Now this is my CRM of choice. It's super simple, easy to use, easy to update. So our action event is to create a new person. So whenever we get a new subscription, that person is automatically created in folk. And I put them in my LinkedIn leads group. Now, obviously, all I wanted to make sure is that I have their email, because that's really all you're going to capture from the person. And if you haven't subscribed, unless you have like a form that they're completing, which you can change it to new form submitted as well. Then I just added in what is their email. So then it takes their email, and I also added in for the description the timestamp of when they subscribe. So like I said, remember when you're in the email section or whatever section that you're grabbing, so let's say you're doing job title, you would then click the plus, and then if they have the job title that you're looking for, you would then add it in there. So like I said, for this example, we have emails. I would just click email and then add it in. Then lastly, just simply test it out, just like we've done all the other things. Always make sure that you're testing it. I don't even think Zapier will actually let you go on to the next step without testing it. Then we move into Slack. Now we've already went through Slack, so I'm going to be pretty quick with it. Instead of doing a channel message, I had it send me a direct message, and all it simply says, it says, hey, you have a new newsletter sub, and then I added in their email. Simple as that. And we tested it. And then lastly, we added in a Google Sheets Zap as well. So the idea here is to, after it sends you a direct message and then adds the individual to a Google Sheet, which you can then have it be like, all right, have we reached out to this person? What are the next steps for this person? All that fun stuff. What information do we have about this person? What position are they in as well? Things like that. Now you could actually set up a Zap that has the individual input their name. Then after it inputs their name, the Zap could then activate a web scraper, which goes out and finds information about that person to then enrich that lead for when you're looking to reach out to them. Not super easy, but pretty easy to set up. It's more so, the idea with Zapier is more so that there is a way to do things, it's finding the way to do it. So for example, it could be you have a Beehive subscription and then it sends it to folk. Then after you send it to Folk, you're then having it web scrape on LinkedIn, for example, information about that person, and then it could send all that information to a Slack or update your Google Sheets, for example. So pretty simple to do, and that would save you tons of time from you having to go out and find all that information about that individual. So we set it up. We could then configure it of like which spreadsheet, what worksheet, what drive you're picking from. And then nice thing is on this side, what it does is it takes the um, headers that you have in your rows and then adds them onto Zapier themselves. So if you wanted to have information from, let's say, the Beehive, it adds in like a have you reached out before, then it would auto populate and say yes, you've reached out to them, or no, you haven't reached out to them, depending on how they submitted like a form that you had instead of a subscription. So that is all I wanted to cover today. We have 3 different Zaps that you can start building today. You have an idea of how to build Zaps yourself, kind of get a better idea of the platform itself, and now you have the next steps to go from not even just enhancing with AI, but automating with AI. That's the big thing. That's what people really, really want to be able to do. I know I've talked to hundreds of business owners that you talk about, yes, they want to learn AI and they want to use ChatGPT, but a lot of what they're looking for is automating the task. So if that is you, 100% would recommend, 1000% would recommend utilizing Zapier or another its competitor, Make. And if you need any help past this, do not hesitate to reach out. I'd love to be able to help any of you. We can jump into a call and I can give you a free 20-30 minute session where we're kind of walking through the idea of building out your own first Zap, just so you have the first one. And then from there, if you're looking for more complicated Zaps, we can figure something out as well. So, yep, that will do for today's video. I appreciate anyone that's stuck around this long.